this is Maggie from Codism. I am the chief copywriter and I put together a lot of our strategies and specifically the strategies when it comes to messaging. And I have Lou here with me. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Lou. I am one of the social media managers at Codism. So I would typically make sure that all of the clients have social media strategies in place and that they have posts scheduled and that they all fit within the brand, the tone, the messaging, and all of the brand guidelines.
So, I mean, like everything we do comes down to a strategy, right? At the end of the day, businesses want marketing that delivers ROI. But that's kind of a double-edged sword, because a lot of times we have clients that come to us and they just want to start the ads, or they just want to get that billboard up, or they just want to start publishing SEO posts. And then when we go to them saying, hey, we're going to start with a messaging strategy, it's a bit confusing. But it's at the same time, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you order your food, you're very excited, you're there because you're hungry, and then they bring you cutlery. But at the same time, you're going to need that cutlery to eat your food. So a strategy is kind of like the cutlery that you need to actually get that marketing ROI. So yeah, we're going to kind of give everyone a breakdown of messaging and the messaging strategy and why that's important. So Lou, what are your first thoughts about a brand's messaging?
My first thoughts about a brand's messaging is that it kind of like holds the entire voice of the brand together in a way, because without it, then you're kind of winging it, so to speak. You don't have an identity, you don't have a voice, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know what your main points are. You're just kind of throwing things out there and seeing what sticks, which is kind of a renegade, rebellious way of doing things, but it's not going to get you those measurable results that you want in the time that you want them to. So it's a very good foundation for any brand's marketing.
Yeah, and when you don't have that messaging, you risk missing the chance to connect to someone who could be a lifelong customer, just because you're not talking to them in a way that they would understand. So usually, messaging forms the foundation of all of your content. It determines who your brand speaks to, what tone of voice your brand uses, and what it says. So basically, when you have consistent messaging that resonates with your target audience and effectively communicates what you do, then you can build on your brand identity and you streamline all your content creation, because you already have like a brand script kind of that tells you how to speak and what kind of words to use. So it's much easier to create content like sending out blogs and ads that like adheres to that brand identity. And the best part for me, messaging, what messaging does, and having some kind of strategy to your messaging, is that all your content is then hyper optimized for conversions, because that's what you want. But generally, if you don't have that strategy in place, you send out ads that maybe promote one unique selling point, and then your blogs say a different thing, and your explainer video says a different thing. So what messaging does when it brings all of that together, it makes sure that whatever you send out into the world is hyper tailored to your target audience, and it's guaranteed to at least catch their eye. So the ads, the blogs, everything you do is then optimized to get as many conversions as possible. And basically, it just helps you to present the benefit of your solutions in a concise and compelling way, so that when you do this, whoever engages with your brand, often they hear the same things from you. And this isn't boring or repetitive, this is consistent. So they associate that consistency from your brand with reliability, and that builds trust. But then on top of that, they're hearing this consistent messaging from you, so that when they're chatting to someone and this person has a need that your business can fulfill, they're like, oh, have you heard about this brand? They do X, Y, and Z. So you ultimately give your target audience the words they need for word of mouth marketing. So you're making like little robots that can then continue doing your marketing for you. And basically this, this consistent messaging across all your content, as I've said, like makes you look more professional. But how would a brand go about making sure their messaging is right? Do you have any tips for this?
There's a couple of tips that I've relied on over the years. You have to ask yourself a couple of questions, like, does your core brand message offer anything different from your competitors?
Yeah, because a lot of clients always have like a lot of, some benefits that seem pretty much standard. And we need to keep in mind that the audience is not new. They've been hearing messaging from competitors and from people in this landscape. So if you say something like you offer world-class support, which you may actually have a really good support system, but that's also something that your target audience is probably used to hearing from competitors. So saying that you offer world-class support is kind of like, not new to them. You need to say something that is different from the messaging that they've gotten used to hearing.
Yeah, and especially it has to be unique to your brand. There has to be something about your support that makes it world-class, something that you found and perfected that makes your support, top-notch. And instead of calling it world-class, be specific and name that thing that makes it world-class.
Yeah, you can say like we're always available and we reply in an hour, or just really get granular on what makes the support world-class.
Yeah.
So other ways to check messaging would also be to make sure the message is simple and easy to understand and compelling, because there's a time and a place to be catchy. I love being witty with copy and being clever, but your core messaging is not the time or place. You want this to be as clear as possible so that anyone who sees your content immediately knows what you do and how that will benefit them.
Yeah, and you also don't want to be throwing technical terms at people or jargony things to sound smart or like you're an expert in your field, because you're just going to confuse people. Like, keep it simple, keep it clear, and keep it honest.
Yeah, there's that acronym, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I learned that back in my days from journalism. And I think you probably learned that too. And it's I hate that. Like, I don't keep it simple, stupid. No, but that is actually something very important to keep in mind when you're doing that core messaging. Because a lot of times, when you're doing the marketing or when you're the business owner yourself, this so well that it's hard to put yourself in a target audience's shoes to kind of see how they would understand it. But you're completely right. A lot of times those terms are something that they don't understand, and we need to keep it simple.
Yeah. So what else do you think is a good way to kind of like check your messaging strategy?
Well, I think there's also a sense of being realistic. Because a lot of brands, a lot of businesses really truly believe in their business, and I would hope so as well, because it is your business. And aspiration is okay, but you don't want to be making promises or saying things that are not realistic. Because if you say one thing in your messaging and the customer then has a completely different experience, that breaks down trust. That then shows up in reviews, which further breaks down trust among social audiences. So I think the messaging also needs to reflect reality.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That should be right at the top. Because I don't know how many times I've been frustrated with brands, and I'm sure everyone has had this experience where you're promised, the best steak in Joburg, or or whatever the case may be, but then you get there and it's like it's either not done to your preference, or it's just average. It's just like every other steak you've had in every other city. So
and that brand probably does have other benefits that they could have been using in their best messaging instead, but instead they just made a promise that's just like a vague, open, false promise to the audience. So you're likely not going to go there again.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell people it sucks. I'm going to tweet about it. I'm going to write a review. So it actually does more damage than good to sort of, kind of be fantastical with the way you tell your brand story.
Yeah.
I think the other most important thing is your core messaging really should resonate with the target audience, because that's who you want it to reach. And it should actually answer questions that they're asking, or respond to either desires or frustrations that they have. It should pique some sort of interest in your target audience. Otherwise,
Yeah.
if you're selling, sand to a camel,
Ice to an
it's not
Eskimo.
ice to an Eskimo. That's the saying. If you're selling ice to an Eskimo, like, they're not really gonna buy it. So you have to be zero in on a problem that your target audience has, and actually surface that in your core messaging.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
does need to resonate with the audience, or with the right audience, and say
Mm.
something interesting. And whenever I think of resonating with the right audience, I always think of Phil from Modern Family, where he's using like the lingo, and he says L is lots of love and WTF is why the face. So
Yeah.
that's who I picture when I see a brand that doesn't have messaging that resonates with their target audience. So you're walking into the space, you think you're saying the right things, but you're not really. You're actually kind of ruining the mood for your target audience. So
Yeah.
that also, like, if you were to begin to create a messaging strategy, I always say it's important to begin with your target audience. And that's what we do when we create our messaging strategies at Codism. Because most businesses stem from either solving a problem for that audience or helping them obtain a desire. So it's important to know what those are and how they feel in relation to your product, and also the problem that your product solves, or the desire that your product helps them obtain. So, something like a toe fungus cream, you need to know that they want the effects of that toe fungus cream. They want to be able to walk around in flip-flops. So that's something. Knowing how the audience feels is something that you can connect to. And ultimately, if a brand shows that they understand the frustrations of the target audience, that creates that emotional connection with the audience, and that also builds trust. So when a brand is now in a position where they have a connection with an audience and they've established some sense of trust, that puts us in the advantageous position of leveraging the emotional connection to that problem, and then amplifying it in content to grab their attention, and to also encourage them to take action and like buy the product. Because we've come a long way since where brands were talking about themselves. And if a brand goes out there in the world saying, we have these items in our formula for our toe fungus cream, no one really cares. You're kind of like, you're that guy who walks up to a girl in a bar and you start bragging about your job and your car and your apartment, and the girl doesn't really care. But if he's talking to her about her life, her job, what she wants to do, he's going to get that attention. So it's kind of the same thing. You go to your target audience, and instead of saying our formula has this and our brand has this and our company has this experience, you can instead position it in a way of being a guide to the audience. Here's how we're going to help you obtain that desire. Here's how we're going to help you with that problem. And instead of saying it's these items of our toe fungus cream that's so cool, you're going to say, hey, we're going to help you go on a date and wear flip-flops confidently without worrying. Because ultimately that's what they want. They want the end result of the product. They don't really care too much about what goes into it. So what are some examples of messaging for anyone who's like still a little bit unclear of what exactly messaging refers to?
Well, so messaging it seems like a broad term, but it's basically like a system of rules that you follow. So you know that, for example, Nando's is a little bit cheeky. You know that Apple is all about cleanliness, effectiveness, being best in class. And you know that certain brands are more humorous. That is what the messaging is, but it's also what the brand is saying. So it's how you're saying it, what you're saying, and to whom you're saying it to. It's kind of like a matrix of those things.
So it's the overall positioning. And I mean, this can show up in a variety of ways. It can be your tagline, but it can also, as you say, be the overall personality of the brand. But then you pull that into different kinds of text or copy, like brand promises or ad slogans or headlines, or even your sales pitch. So the last thing we're going to touch on is just our messaging strategies and how we structure them. So as I've mentioned, we always begin with target audience information. You need to understand who you're talking to before you can determine how you're going to talk to them. So we always get a couple of target personas, and we get the traits. You know, are they sociable? Are they frugal? Are they loyal? Are they tech savvy? What are things that are going on in their life already that helps us understand them better? And then we also look at their frustrations, like problems that they're struggling with and how that makes them feel. We look at their desires. What do they want? And we look at objections. So objections are things that are potentially stopping them from taking action. And it's good to know this, because then we can be proactive about those objections, and we can address that in copy already. So before they even have the thought of, oh, but how's this going to work? Or how do I get that? We address that and we say, oh, but we ship internationally, or this is how we help you overcome the big payment objection. We have a payment plan. So we make it easy for them, and we break down all of the barriers that are keeping them from taking action. So once we have that information, we also touch on the geographical location, because that also brings ties language together. And then we go into the brand identity. And that's where we determine the biggest unique selling points, or USPs. We determine the tone of voice, the brand personality, and the vocabulary, like what kind of words or phrases or terms does the brand use. We determine the slogan option and then the positioning. And then we bring that all together in a brand script, where we actually go and we write out the unique selling points and how we will phrase that, so that if you ever need to promote a specific part of the brand, you can go to the messaging strategy, copy it and paste it, because this is now your brand script. And then we also have a short bio that you can copy and paste in social posts or social media bios. And then an extended bio that explains the brand story a little bit more. We also have a script that talks about the offer. So what can guests expect? And then you always phrase it in a way that resonates with them. And then we also have something called stakes. So the stakes are kind of the risks of not working with your business. And this is not to drive fear, but it's just a subtle way to kind of remind your target audience of what it would be like, or, you know, what of the problems they're already struggling with. So this is something, again, where you leverage that emotional connection to the problem that they have. And it's just kind of, creating that urgency where you say, oh, instead of ending up at the same restaurant with the bad steak, you can go to this place that, you know, cooks your steak in front of you. So just kind of reminding them of, you know, why they're looking at you in the first place. Then we have post-purchase success. And that's kind of like the opposite side of stakes, where we show them what a successful purchase will look like in their life. Because as I've said before, the individual brand features, like the formula of the toe fungus cream, are things that, you know, the audience, they care about, but it's not going to make them sell. So instead, we paint them a picture with words of what it would look like once they've actually bought your product or used your service. So where, you know, you say, okay, now here you find your favorite go-to restaurant, or you discover an exotic culinary experience. And then, of course, like a very good and important thing to have is your calls to action, or your CTA. So for us, it's always helpful to put together 3 to 5 CTAs that you consistently put in your copy. So you determine what action you want the audience to take, and then you make it consistent for them and you remind them of that. And you can even split this up between, more top of funnel actions to get to know the brand, and then more bottom of funnel actions to buy or to place an order. But it's always really important to make it clear what you want your audience to do, because now by this time they have seen your brand. They have responded with some kind of emotional response where either they want the solution to the problem or they want to obtain that desire. Now they've also given you time to explain your unique selling points. And now you've overcome their objections, everything. You've gotten them to the stage that it's really important, again, to keep it simple, stupid. Make it clear what you want them to do and give them an exact direction. So those are our messaging strategies. And that's kind of what we put into them and why they're important in the first place. So do you have anything else to add to messaging?
Well, I think you captured it all right there at the end, but I just want to reiterate that, not having a messaging strategy is like driving your brand blind. It's really reckless. It's wasteful also, I think, is one thing that we need to mention, because clients care about where they're funneling their resources. So if you are driving your brand blind, so to speak, you are wasting a lot of time, and most importantly, money on something that might not work. Whereas you can actually just kind of like optimize it into a strategy that you're almost guaranteed will work, and that you can iterate and optimize as you go along, because that's another important thing about messaging strategies, is that they're not frozen in time. The more you learn about your brand, the more you learn about your audience, the more you get to improve them and get them closer and closer to perfection.
And let's not forget how easy it is also. I mean, you and I are natural writers, but a lot of clients are not. That's why they get someone to help them with marketing to begin with. So if you're not a natural writer and your marketing strategy does involve a messaging strategy, that actually helps you automatically get the words and use those words, because you have the script. And like you say, it's a dynamic thing. It's not like, set it in stone and that's how you're always going to talk. Your messaging eventually will scale as your business does. Yeah. So yeah, that's it from us on messaging strategies. We hope that this was helpful. And if anyone has any more questions, you know where to reach us.